Well, NPN family, it's great to be back with you once again on a Friday. But I'm recording this a bit earlier this week because as a ministry, Neighbourhood Prayer Network has become a member organisation with the Evangelical Alliance earlier this year. And so when I heard that they were doing the launch of their Talking Jesus update, I suddenly thought we need to talk about that. Quite literally, we need to talk Jesus. Some people say, what do you get by being a member of the Evangelical Alliance? And it does mean that you get to talk to some great friends about what they're up to. And so when I saw that the Talking Jesus research was out, I suddenly thought, do you know what? I need to drop a message to my friend Rachael at the Evangelical Alliance and say, can we have a conversation and talk a little bit about this research, talk a bit about kind of where we've come from, because there's been Talking Jesus research. Some of you may go, I've heard of Talking Jesus before. So there's been Talking Jesus research that was done a number of years ago, but also the fact that there's been an update in Talking Jesus research. So what do some of the stats mean for us, and what does that mean for us? Because Neighbourhood Prayer Network, we have a vision to see Christians engaging with people on their streets and in their community. So I wanted to chat to Rachael and see if she had any wisdom about what this new Talking Jesus research might mean for us as we think about how we seek to be good neighbours on our street. So Rachael, it's really great to see you. Thank you for hanging out with me for a little bit of time and just chat. But remind me, what's your role within the Evangelical Alliance? What do you do?
Good to be with you, Adam. I serve at the Evangelical Alliance as head of mission and have been part of this Talking Jesus partnership, as you mentioned.
So your job is basically to help the evangelical side, the evangelistic side of the work of Evangelical Alliance.
Yeah, absolutely. So our heart within the mission team and the wider EA, our heart is to work with the church, work with our individual members and our member organisations like yourselves, to really be resourced and equipped and encouraged, hopefully along the way, in all that they seek to do across the broadest ministry of the church. Obviously, it's been a really challenging time amidst the pandemic, and with churches open and shut and online and now hybrid and meeting in person again. Yeah, the role of the mission team has basically been to be really listening to church leaders. We've surveyed church leaders quite a lot during the pandemic through our Changing Church survey at the EA, but really discerning as well, sort of throughout this pandemic roller coaster that we've all been through, what is God doing with the church? What is his voice? And so part of it has been really discerning kind of the lie of the land. And during that time, this re-emergence of the Talking Jesus research and the partnership came about, really. So yeah.
Really, but talk to us a bit, because obviously I mentioned, and you've made mention too, about the fact that there's been previous Talking Jesus research. So what went before what you've launched in the last couple of days?
Yeah, brilliant. So back in 2015, which obviously is 7 years or so ago, the original Talking Jesus research was commissioned by a bunch of denominational leaders. And where that conversation came about was that the leaders wanted to know, what does the landscape look like in terms of evangelism? Where is the church having impact? And basically, what are the perceptions of Christianity, or what are the perceptions as well of non-Christians when they look at any Christians that they may know? So that was the original partnership, and that came about through, like I said, off the back of this call from denominational leaders. But the partnership was the Church of England, it was Hope, and the EA. The plan was always, post that research in 2015, to go again 5 years on and be able to compare and contrast sort of how things have changed. But obviously, none of us knew that a global pandemic was going to hit. And so we waited at that point in time, obviously with 2020 and all that was going on then. What's been really encouraging in 2020, 2021 was that actually the conversation has grown, and there were other partners that we work very closely in unity with, the likes of Alpha and Louis Palau and others, which I'll mention in a moment, who were having the same sort of conversations and asking the same sort of questions about the lie of the land in terms of evangelism. So all that to say, basically in 21 and now launching in 2022, just a week or so ago, it's now a 5-way partnership. So the research, we've used loads of the same questions so that we could compare and contrast. It's a UK survey. We asked about 4,000 Christians the questions that we posed in the survey, and it's now a partnership between ourselves at EA, Hope Together, Kingsgate, Alpha, and the Louis Palau Association. So it's been fascinating to be part of that journey with the partnership and see this research launch, which was just at the end of April.
Brilliant. Thanks, Rachael. Just my question. You know, as you look at kind of, we'll dig down in a second to what this new Talking Jesus research has found out. But as we think kind of broad brush strokes, have things changed an awful lot in the last 7 years in terms of how people think about Jesus and how they think about how non-Christians perceive us? Have things changed an awful lot?
Not an awful lot. The amazing thing about the research that came in 2015 was that it was overwhelmingly positive. So much so that actually when it was launched, we had to go again with some of the research to dig deeper, because it was so positive that people didn't altogether believe it. And I say that was in the realms of kind of what non-Christians said about their Christian friends, what their reflections may have been of the church and so on. And actually in our findings from the 2022 research is a lot of that has remained similarly positive. But what that does tell us is there's loads of good news in this research. And I'd really encourage ministry leaders, church leaders, group leaders, children, youth, adults ministry to really delve into this research, because there are loads of nuggets which would really help to resource and encourage us, but challenge us as well. So there's a lot that still remains the same. However, there have been some shifts, some positive, some negative. But again, we can unpack some of that as we move on.
There may be those that are watching, and let me not say that Christians are cynical, Rachel, but there'll be some people who sit there and go, the Evangelical Alliance, Hope Together, and the other partners are obviously wanting to simply say things are good when maybe they're not. But I know that there's been lots of stuff, particularly around the pandemic, where people have said that they're spiritually hungry, they're looking for things. Is this coming to fruition in what this Talking Jesus research says?
Yeah, absolutely. I think rather than looking just for the good news, we really wanted to go again with this research to get an actual picture of what people are saying, something that was credible, that we've dug deep into. And Savanta Comres helped us carry out this research, as I said, amongst 4,000 people across the UK of all different ages and ethnicities and so on, so that we would really be able to see realistically what the landscape looks like. As you said, having journeyed through the pandemic, you would imagine that actually with the compare and contrast to 2015, that quite a few things have changed. We asked some of the same questions, but like I said, we added in a few new questions as well. So that's been quite interesting to see the findings. One of the things that strikes me as being really good news is that we surveyed lots of non-Christians, so practicing Christians, but also non-Christians. And it came out that for those non-Christians who knew a Christian and had a conversation with a Christian, what back in 2015 told us that 1 in 5 of those non-Christians had a conversation and that they were willing to go again in conversation with their Christian friends. Actually, there's been a significant increase in that, or more positive, that actually now 1 in 3 people are saying that where they've had a positive conversation, they'd be really open to future conversations. So I think that's really good news, because what it tells us is, as you said, Adam, there's a hunger, maybe there's an openness. We also asked what are some of the critical questions being asked by those non-Christians in those sorts of conversations. And it interested me to find out that 18% of the whole population said that one of the critical questions was, will everything be okay? Well, in the light of a global pandemic and war situation, that's quite understandable, isn't it? That people are wanting to know, will it be okay? They're also asking, what should I do with my life? Most importantly, or overridingly, it told us that 22% of non-Christians, but also across the board, are asking, what happens when I die? So there's all these big questions of life really coming to the fore, but brilliant and good news for us to recognise that 1 in 3 of our non-Christian friends who we might have had that initial starter conversation with are actually really open to going again to explore a bit further. So that's good news for the church.
It really is great news. Interestingly, some months ago when Phil was working around story bearers, one of the conversations that we had with our NPN family was about how, as Phil was reminding us, we need to see people as people and not projects. And it's interesting that we've seen more people say that they would be interested in having a kind of follow-up conversation. And actually those conversations are those kind of things that actually, if we view people rather than going, I've got a checklist or things I need to instill in people, actually people are, as you say, asking questions about, is everything going to be all right? What happens when I die? Those things that we as Christians can have some answers to. It's not the deep stuff, it's just some of the simple stuff.
And that really comes out resoundingly through this research. The challenges are there, absolutely, as to, we asked questions around, what adjectives would non-Christians use to describe Christians that they knew of. So we found out that 53% of the population say that they know of somebody who's a Christian. So that's 1 in 2, isn't it? So if you think about your friends, 53%, and those people would be a family member or a friend. But in the context of that, they said that actually the adjectives that came out were that they think that we're caring, we're friendly, we're good-humoured, that we're generous. So like you said, with Phil talking about story bearer and friendship, actually the good news for us again is that those non-Christians around us do actually know us, they do actually like us, and when we venture into conversations, it did come out again in the research that they think the conversations are positive, particularly when we ask them what they think. That came out too as a statistic for us, that when we venture into a conversation to ask them what they think, then that leads to a positive experience. They also, representing the survey, said that when we share something of our personal story, that too is really impactful and can be, mind and life transforming in that context. So it just reminds me, really, I think that, and again, great encouragement to us as the church, that when we strip it right back, and as you said, Adam, do the life on life, simple, non-baggage, sharing life together, and the nuggets of faith that we drop in, then that's actually really life transforming and takes people closer on that faith journey. There's a lot of challenge in this as well, though, because having just mentioned the perceptions of Christians, we also asked the questions about what do non-Christians think of the church, and it was in that actually not quite so positive, dare I say. So 26% picked out the adjectives saying they felt the church could be hypocritical, 26% said it could be narrow-minded, but it's not all bad news. 22% of those surveyed said that they thought the church was friendly. So again, not always just looking for the good news, we're looking to encourage the church around that welcome, invitation, hospitality, and to take up the challenges where they come as well through this research.
Well, I think that is that reminder that actually for a ministry like Neighbourhood Prayer Network, that's about wanting to encourage individual Christians at their local level, at their street level, to engage, the stuff that's coming out of this Talking Jesus is actually good news. And actually, while we still have some challenges that we need to address when we think about kind of the bigger church, and whether what a person who isn't a person of faith might think about, our churches as our buildings and what they think goes on in them, actually at the local level, there's some great stuff happening. And actually, people do tend to know us and like us. And again, I think one of the things, as I reflected, and friends, if you haven't watched the launch of the Talking Jesus Research, let me commend you to go and watch it. Go to the Evangelical Alliance YouTube channel, probably the best place to go and find it, and you can hear some of the partners that have been part of this, some church leaders like Mark Greenwood and others speaking into what does this mean. Let me encourage you to go and watch this, because sometimes this conversation that I'm having with Rachel doesn't do it justice. The launch was an hour. We're not going to be together for half as long as that. So let me encourage you to go back and watch the launch. But I think as I watch the launch, Rachel, my abiding thing is going, actually, it reaffirmed that conversation that I had with Phil about the fact that maybe as Christians, and particularly Christians who are engaged in our streets, engaged in our communities, we need to not see people as projects, but people whom we do life with. And actually, when we're not being fake, when we're not being plastic, and we're being genuine and authentic, people see that.
Absolutely. And one statistic, which I'm sure you'll like as well, is that amongst that, the 53% who say that they know a Christian, actually 8% of those said that person is a neighbour, whereas back in 2015 that percentage was only 4%. So I do wonder whether through the pandemic and through our WhatsApp groups and so on, actually there's been that impact made where people have, and Christians have, intentionally looked to those on their doorstep. They've befriended people in isolation and so on, and actually that's had a knock-on impact, that maybe we do know people in our communities and our neighbourhoods more than maybe we did pre-pandemic. So as you said, it really provides us, a lot of the findings here provide again a springboard for us to be encouraged in what we have done, what we're already doing, but to really look for those intentional opportunities opportunities to just, again, like I said, release ourselves of the baggage of having to share the whole gospel, but of course having an answer and being willing and bold and brave enough on occasions to just gently share what our life is all about as regularly as we would do to have a coffee or a barbecue with a neighbour or a friend.
I remember doing an interview, Rachel, for Premier Christian Radio a number of years ago, and I was put up on this pedestal being on radio. I was an in-studio guest for an hour, and the conversation was about faith and being natural in our faith. And I remember the presenter of the programme on Premier Christian Radio saying to those that were listening in, if you've got a question for Adam the expert, text them into the programme. And I really don't like it when people go, Adam the expert, because actually I think the thing about, doing the work of being a witness, and actually this is what this research for me affirms, we're called to be a witness. There's there is a role for the evangelist, but actually for all of us we're called to be a witness. That's why being an expert is something I find unhelpful. I remember back a number of years ago people texting in, and these are mainly Christians texting into a Christian radio station saying, I've been taught how to share my faith, and I've kind of, I don't do it all. I can't do it naturally. I know what I've got to say, and I kind of bulldozer in everything I feel like I need to say. And actually for me, I think, particularly as we think about this through a neighbour's guise and looking at through a neighbour's lens, actually, I think this research tells us that our job isn't to kind of go for the bulldozing effect. It's simply just to share as we're given opportunity, and our job isn't to kind of do it in one fell swoop. We're to do it in little bits, in little chunks, and do life and journey life together.
Absolutely. It is that intentionality, isn't it, of just genuinely developing genuine relationships and friendships. But the intentional bit is surely praying for our friends, like we've said, praying for the 3 or praying for the 5, as you feel led, having people's names up wherever you might see them, being reminded of actually maybe the friends or family members that you're praying for, to just meet and greet and chat to those that you see on the school run or in the pub or having coffee or whatever. But not many people want to feel like there's an agenda in a conversation, do they? We just love to spend time with people where we just genuinely share life and talk about, the kids or holidays and things that just come out naturally, that overflow of what's your natural story. And certainly, again, the Talking Jesus research talks, about, again, at any age, the encouraging stats that show that at any age people are still coming to faith. It does, however, point particularly to the younger age groups as well, which again is a great encouragement for the church, that in terms of not just our own personal relationships, but in our ministry within the church, the importance of investing in our toddler, our children, our youth ministry, because so many are journeying alongside children and families holistically, or alongside young people. 12% of people come to faith between the age of 5 and 10, 12% between 11 and 14, and it's the numbers bigger than that amongst the 14 to 18. So in all of this, as you said, Adam, it's just about the being alongside, isn't it? And I think we've probably done ourselves a disservice of loading up, like I said, this pressure, this baggage of how we share the gospel. But actually we know, as in mentoring young people or just doing life and being a friend, actually to strip it right back can make us really effective witnesses, whereas maybe in the past we've abdicated our roles from the evangelist that we perceive to be somebody that we can't be. And yet, wouldn't it be great if, as a church across the UK, we had this army of people who very gently just do life and faith alongside people, prayerfully going about their day-to-day lives as well alongside others, but connecting the dots as they go, and God uses that along the way, doesn't he? So powerful friendship.
I'd love just to say to Neighbourhood Prayer Network family that are watching my conversation with Rachel from the Evangelical Alliance, one of the things that for us as part of the vision of Neighbourhood Prayer Network is about praying intentionally for people by name. We've talked before as a family about how, the start of that is writing just the list, and maybe if we're sitting on a bus or whatever we might be doing, just praying over that list and asking God to do that, but also asking for him to give kind of God encounters, and God gives us those opportunities if we ask. But part of it is just about knowing firstly who lives alongside us and who lives around us. Rachel, as a ministry over the last few months since I've taken over as UK director of Neighbourhood Prayer Network, people have been saying to me, so what's your big thing? What are you saying? And I've been saying that as a ministry, as a family of over 8,500 people across the UK who are part of NPN, you know, for us, this isn't a time for us to go back. It's a time for us to go forward. It's interesting that you make the comment about the fact that 4% in the original Talking Jesus, 8% now of people saying that they know Christians because of the fact that they're neighbours on their street. So that's something for us as a ministry. But I think this Talking Jesus research does bear out the fact that we're not called to retreat. We're called to keep going forward in our neighbourhoods. So what would be your piece of wisdom or advice to somebody who's watching this, who's part of our NPN family, who's saying, how might that look? What might that look like in my street or in my community? What would you say to them, Rachel?
I don't know about wisdom, Adam, but certainly what comes out from the research, I think, is that it points to the fact that the best bridge to other individuals around us is the individual Christian witness. Like I said, you know, looking back at the pandemic, whilst that was horrendous and very difficult for so many, there were some good things that came out of it, weren't there? And the breakdown of some of those boundaries, maybe in our neighbourhoods and our communities, were really powerful. And yet, as soon as we moved past the crisis moment, many of the WhatsApp groups stopped and so on. And so there is still obviously a recovery time, isn't there? A rehabilitation for so many of us. But I suppose in recognising so much of what this research tells us of the power of friendship, the power of us encountering people who may still feel isolated and so on, then the encouragement is there to just keep going, to keep having our eyes open, to keep being prayerful, to keep looking maybe for the practical hooks, whether that is to come into the family of the church community around seasonal hooks, Easter, Queen's Jubilee, you know, Thanksgiving, whatever we want to adopt. There's certainly a place for people coming into the heart of the community of the church, but equally that missional edge of who we, you know, how we look at those on our doorstep and being intentional. So I think there's a place for stripping away, like we said, just the things that would hold us back, about being a great friend, about praying that God will equip us, as you said earlier, spotting the opportunities, and then just being braver and bolder than maybe we've dared to before. I know for myself, I've challenged myself over the years to even change the language that I would use, to, you know, rather than say for a friend who's in crisis or a difficult moment, you know, oh, I'll send one up for you, you know, to actually say, I'll pray for you, or, you know, would you like to come along to this? Or doing things outdoors in the community that are very pop-up, but actually facilitate that community sense, and looking at how we draw people into community, but actually intentionally are pointing them towards Jesus as well. It's an ongoing process, isn't it? But I think what comes out of the research, Adam, is just overwhelmingly positive. It does have its challenges, and we could go on a lot more to pulling some of those out, and some aspects that have decreased as well, where provokes aspects of challenge for us since the 2015 research. But overridingly at this point in time, I think I'd love to encourage people that both the place of the church, the place of interaction, certainly the place of powerful friendships and outreach, should encourage us all at this point in time to just keep going and be brave.
Thanks, Rachel. I think you're absolutely right. I want to just say a couple of things, and then as we come into land, because we could talk forever on this stuff. Rachel, it's a shared passion of you and I about how as a church we move forward, how as individuals do we move forward in sharing our faith, in being powerful witnesses, because we've got the greatest news ever. That's what Easter tells us. So we need to share that. So I know it's a thing that unites us. So I'm going to ask us, as we come into the end of our conversation, if you'd lead us in prayer in a second for those who are watching, that actually God would speak to them through that. But just a couple of things I did want to say before we close in prayer. Firstly, you are aware, Neighbourhood Prayer Network family, of our partnership and our strategic friendship with Faith in Later Life. We have a strategic friendship and partnership that's been going for a number of years with the great Christian ministry Faith in Later Life. Rachel is coming to talk to the church champions later in the month, later in May, about what does the Talking Jesus research look like when we're thinking about issues around older people and loneliness, and to keep on keeping going, which is part of what Rachel just mentioned there. I'm sure my good friend Jamie Hill would welcome you with open arms if you said, you know, that's something I'd love to find out a little bit more of, and a little bit more detail. get in touch with me directly. Drop me an email, ukdirector@neighbourhoodprayer.net. And if you want to come and hear Rachel talk about this to the church champions on the 19th of May with our friends at Faith in Later Life, I'm sure Jamie and I'm sure Rachel would love to see you there, because there is an awful lot that we need to chew over. The other thing that I want to say is, obviously Rachel made mention there about some of the things which are challenges. As the Talking Jesus research continues to get out there, and it's been great that we've been kind of one of the first ministries to talk to you about this, Rachel. Actually, it's important that we what's the old Lloyd Grossman phrase? Rude, mark, and inwardly digest. Let's digest about this. Let's take time to look at it, read it, and think about it. So again, watch the launch, go to the Talking Jesus website when the report goes live, and have a look at it. And particularly, as Rachel said, if you're a church leader or involved in any type of leadership role within your church, go and have a look at it and think about what that might mean for you. And I'm sure that Rachel and other partners within the Talking Jesus research would love to follow up. If there's something in there that you go, there's a light bulb moment, or there's a further conversation moment, get in touch. And if you want us to help create some introductions, then again, drop as an email address at NPN, and we'd love to create some connections, because it's important that we do this together. It feels like for such a time as this, that this research was done and it's published and it's out there. And my prayer is that over the course of the next months, we don't just kind of watch this video once, but actually we keep going back to what does this stuff say, and think about what this means for us in our context, whether we're an individual Christian looking to be a witness on our street, whether we're involved in church leadership. What does that look like? What might God be saying to us? So let me encourage you to go back and look at that, particularly, as I say, if you're in a position of leadership. It's absolutely great that Neighbourhood Prayer Network is able to be a member organisation of the Evangelical Alliance, but also for us, share is one of our values within NPN. We're to pray for, we're to show care for, and we're to share. And some of the conversations that we've been having as a leadership team at the moment is probably the weakest area of our ministry, is actually that share area. I haven't had a chance to chat with other members of the leadership team in the last week, but I think that maybe the Talking Jesus is a kick up the backside for us as a leadership team to say, okay, how do we continue to help you, our members, think about that? So grateful to Phil, so grateful to Rachel for all the work that they do around the evangelism and sharing faith strand within the Evangelical Alliance. And I think, as was said to Gavin when Gavin was encouraging us to become a member organisation, he said, you will really benefit from the work of the Evangelical Alliance. And so we do thank the Evangelical Alliance for their friendship in the way that we're able to connect and to communicate. So let me encourage you to go and find Talking Jesus. How do people find out the report? How do people get hold of this stuff, Rachel?
So quite simply, the report will go live in about 2 weeks, so middle of May, around the time that I'm with you again with Faith and Later Life. And that is just simply from our website, which is talkingjesus.org. So yeah, please download the full report. That'll have all the statistics well beyond what I've been able to even share with you today. And do share that across your leadership teams. Just to reiterate, Adam, as well as you said, two other things very briefly. One is, so we will be doing a filmed recording of the breakdown of lots of the different stats. There's a snapshot in the launch moment that you've mentioned on the EA YouTube, but we'll also film a recording that again might help leadership teams or networks to really digest all of the intricacies of that. And lastly, just to reiterate what you said, if any church leaders, networks, church together groups, conferences, whatever, would love a bit of the presentation, but also most importantly is what is on our heart, to help leaders dissect what does this look like for me in my context, my community, how can we really encourage Christian witness in our places and spaces, then any one of the partners, including myself, would love to draw alongside and come and make that happen. So yes, but ultimately talkingjesus.org will have all that information.
Brilliant. And as I say, if you want to get any information, if you're going, any of that stuff resonates and you're trying to work out which partner or how that might work in your context, for NPN, we act a little bit like a dating agency sometimes, and we create some connections. So if we can help you in any way of that, but go to the website, that's the first port of contact. Lots more stuff to come, and I'm sure Rachel will talk about this again as we continue to see this message being rolled out. because it is for such a time as this. But I want, as we come into land, as they say, they always say that, don't they, now in preaching, when you come into land at the end of the message, although we've just had a conversation, it's been great to hang out with you, Rachel, for a little while today. But would you just pray for us, Rachel, for those that are watching, as those that are listening to this conversation, that they would do whatever God is prompting them to do. Sometimes it's really easy for us as leaders, Rachel, to say to people, we want you to respond in a particular way. Actually, for us, Neighbourhood Prayer Network, the reason when I said to Rachel, could we record this? I said, I'd love us just to pray that actually God would direct you as you're watching this. It's not by accident that you're watching this, that God would speak to you and reveal to you what he's calling you to do next, at whatever level that is. So, Rachel, would you just lead us in prayer?
Sure. Thanks, Adam. Yeah, Father God, we do just thank you for this Talking Jesus research, Lord. We thank you that it is a tool that we trust and hope and pray would just encourage each one of us. Would it resource us, inspire us, challenge us? Would it help flag up the opportunities that are there ahead of us? And Lord, where various of the statistics encourage us, but also challenge us to change or do things differently, may we have a real openness to where the wave of your Spirit is already at work and where we just maybe need to catch up or to tweak things in order to be serving you more fruitfully in our places and spaces that we encounter those who aren't yet Christians. Lord, thank you for your faithfulness. Thank you that you're always with us. Thank you for the many people in our places and our communities and our churches who have gone before to make you known. But Lord, we pray for this time and season, would you just help us to digest some of these findings? Would they serve us well as we look to our church communities and how we welcome those on the fringe or in our groups and those who connect with us? But we do just pray, Lord, that as we come out of this crazy pandemic season and things re-emerge, however they look, Lord, would we just be emboldened? Would we be prayerful people that commit to praying for our friends, our family members? May we really see, Lord, that like the stats tell us, that 1 in 3 who've had a conversation with us are open to go again. Lord, may we just really take up those opportunities and find the right words to just genuinely share our life and our faith stories with those around us. So Lord, I just pray that as this research rolls out, would it get into the right people's hands to just be able to spark thoughts and waves of imagination for us corporately and individually. And may we together just really have a heart and a passion again to make Jesus known across the UK and with those who we hold dear to us and are in our neighbourhoods and on our doorstep. So we just lift ourselves to you. May we be faithful. May we be encouraged. May we know that you're with us, and may you continue to do great things in drawing people to yourself in this season, I pray. In your name, amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Rachel. Friends, NPN family, it's been great to spend this time. Please do share this video with whoever you think needs to see this conversation. Rachel, it's just been a joy, as always, to sit down. And NPN family, no doubt I will pop up and chat to a good friend of mine doing some great work, because as Neighbourhood Prayer Network, we want to celebrate some great stuff. So I'll no doubt pop up in a couple of weeks or so with another one of these conversations. But until then, may God bless you. Thank you for all that you do to support Neighbourhood Prayer Network, for those who are living out that call to love your neighbours on your streets. Thank you so much for what you do. If you've got stories that will encourage and inspire the network, then please send them in. I love reading the ones that come from the Northwest. Nick Harding's doing a great job of collecting stories up in the Northwest through Together for the Harvest. But if you've got a story that you want to share with us, then get in touch, because it's important. It's important. Sometimes the small things are the stuff that actually encourage us to keep going forward. So do send them my way. I'd love to share them within our network. But thank you so much for what you do. And until next time, God bless you.